Hello and welcome to the next edition of Lviv International Talks. And today we have here in our studio a great friend of Lviv, friend of ours, and great architect, Martin Duplantier, who is the president of the French Architecture Association. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Taras.
We're so glad to see you again in Lviv.
Me too.
You came here this time for an urban forum in Lviv, where there have been many discussions about the future of the cities and also rebuilding of Ukraine. What are your main conclusions so far and impressions?
Well, first, I want to thank really all the organizers of this first international urban forum in Lviv. It has been a great success, about 700 people attending, speakers from all over Europe of great quality, and a lot of discussions, very interesting and relevant, because most of the speakers had already touched ground in Ukraine at some point with different projects. So they were not,
theoretical.
Exactly. They were quite concrete and very complementary as well. The conclusions, first conclusion is there should be a second session next year. That's what I told your mayor, and he seemed to agree. So hopefully he's going to confirm that. Second conclusion is there's a lot to be done. We know this. And we need to train, to prepare, to anticipate as much as we can the big task of transformation, of reconstruction of the country.
What are the main trends today in terms of building the cities of the future? Because when we come back to the topic of rebuilding of Ukraine, everyone says that we have to build not what it was, but much, much better, to build something absolutely astonishing. What are the main trends today?
Yeah, I would say that there is a big opportunity to transform Ukrainian cities in something more Ukrainian, with a strong local identity. So to build much better than what it was. And there's a threat, opportunity and threat. And the threat is, when we look back at history, reconstruction periods have always generated the worst and the best. In France, for example, you have really some grands ensembles, so a lot of the great estates that we have been building in the 50s, so for reconstruction, and we're still healing that. We're still correcting. We're still trying to either demolish or repair or etc., because we didn't do it in a proper way at that time. So we have to be careful. We have to know the errors that have been made by the Soviets in 1945 and after. We have not to repeat what history has done wrong, and to reconnect Ukrainian cities with their territory, with their geography, with their culture, with their identity. And it's a great opportunity to gather, to federate people, citizens, designers, mayors, stakeholders, companies, private companies, public sectors, everyone around this idea of making a better Ukrainian city.
So identity, where do you think would be the part where local identity, you mean local identity, by local identity you mean the identity of cities and regions, or Ukrainian?
I mean both. I mean that actually the Soviet Union has rebuilt in the same standard way from Vladivostok to Lviv, from Murmansk to Odessa, and without any distinction of the place, the climate, nor the needs, etc. So it has generated a standard city, and what Ukraine is fighting for is freedom and existence, but also its culture, its own culture. And I think you have different great cities in villages in this country, and it would be very nice to actually redevelop or transform these cities with their own identity within the Ukrainian culture. And by doing so, you can tackle sustainability by having local resources. You can create jobs and also a competitive advantage for Ukraine, because actually what Ukraine is facing at the moment, all the crises at the same moment, is just the acceleration and concentration of all the crises that Europe will face step by step. So if you manage to transform your country in this sustainable way, in this long-term vision, then you will be the avant-garde of Europe, right? And you will sell your know-how, you will sell your expertise to France, to Germany, to Scandinavia. So let's do it. You have everything in your hands. Let's do
Great.
it.
Sounds very great, but it means that we have to sit, but it means that everyone has to sit all together and think about it, like the national government, local governments, architects, developers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we are trying to do, and we are trying to assist most of these actors in Ukraine by bringing these sustainable technologies, for example, from France, from Czech Republic, from Norway, these sustainable technologies that we provide, and we make them available at the same price or even a lower price than the standard polluting technologies, for architects, for developers, for the public sector to rebuild the country with in mind something that is a long-term vision and not just a short-term, let's do it quickly in a bad way, and then we will heal for decades what we have done for reconstruction. So you see the vision, there's a clear strategy that needs to be aligned from the central government to the local authorities to give a chance for this step and this jump in terms of technologies.
Thank you. Martin, let's talk now about Lviv. We're staying here and having this conversation, I think, first of all, thanks to the armed forces of Ukraine and support of all those who support the armed forces, both volunteers and the support of the world, Western world, first of all. But Lviv, at the same time, being far from the front line, is at the same time it's an entry point for the Western world to Ukraine. It's an important logistical, humanitarian hub, and a city which has around 1 million people right now living here. What have you seen so far in the city, coming here for a few times already? What do you see the city does have of what such a hub needs, and what should it think about in advance in order to become such a city that will be an avant-garde to other European cities, even Western European?
Well, first I'd like to say that Lviv is a pure European city. So there's no contradiction or lessons to be taken from the European city urban fabric. It is already here. But you are at a tipping point of a city being, since, let's say, 70 years at some kind of a cul-de-sac, so a dead end, because the connection to the European Union was not so strong. And now you're transforming this region into the new gate of the country. And of course, it has a lot of consequences, plus the IDPs, plus the tech, Ukrainian tech, which is very dynamic here. So all of that is
rehabilitation of the soldiers.
Rehabilitation of the soldiers with Unbroken and all the rest of the medical hub that you're building. So you need infrastructure to support that. You need to review clearly the traffic scheme, but if it were only this, that would be easy, I would say. But that's already a lot of work. So that means in terms of mobility, collective mobility, the trains, the stations, not only a tramway, but probably something else, bike lines, of course. You have to have a great network of bike lanes everywhere. But mobility means also accessibility. And accessibility, it's as much for the city center, which I love the stones on the pavement, etc. But if we think about all the wounded people that will like to come,
it's not accessible.
Yes, it's not accessible. So it's a serious thing that we have to think, and you have guys to think of how to review that to make it accessible for everyone, for wheelchairs, etc. And access to the city in general. That means also building housing. That means renovating the brownfields. That means trying to find the boundaries of a city, because once you have the boundaries, you know where your playground is and where you can actually densify thanks to your new infrastructure, thanks to your new scheme. So all of that needs, and the place of nature and the place of greenery, which is a very strong ally to face climate change. Let's not forget this point, because this is crucial. And I think a city like Lviv has a very good DNA from first, because you have a lot of greenery. But if you start cutting it because it's a problem for the networks underground, or it's a problem because it's falling, it seems to fall down, etc., then you have always an excuse to cut a tree. And it would be interesting to see if the city of Lviv would be able to develop a scheme to protect trees, to put them on a map and to say all these trees we cannot cut them. And if we cut them, we get a fine, or we have to replace them by 10 of them. To have some kind of a trade-off, not to freeze everything, but to make sure that the quality of nature in the city remains the same. Because if you put more people and you cut the trees, the city will be unlivable.
Let's talk about one example. We have here our city. We have here our Shevchenko Street, which goes from the center to almost the edge of the city, and this street has been just renovated. It was a long time renovation, but it's been absolutely new street now, and as you see, there were not many trees. There were some trees, as you can also see in our text, but they had to be cut due to different reasons that you already mentioned here. What is your perspective of such a city, of such a street? How could it be done differently?
Well, of course, in many ways. So it's always easy. I would like to say that I haven't been there. So, and it's always easy to criticize. The good thing is that it seems like there is a new bike lane, so that's a good point. There is a public transport. It's also a good point. Probably the public transport could be on its own path, making it possible to plant grass instead of having stone. This is again a way to refresh the city and to fight climate change, is to have as much natural soil as possible and as little mineral, which is asphalt or stone area as possible. So yes, of course, we could have made it better, but that means also another scheme maybe for the public transport. So it's hard to judge just on this project, because it seems like it doesn't go all the way of the street. It's only part of it. But of course, the more trees we plant, the better. The more trees we keep, the better. And I would encourage the city, before cutting any tree, to make a real medical assessment of the tree, if it really is impossible to keep it or not, because you can always find an excuse to cut a tree. And we could have maybe a permission to, a cutting permit instead of a building permit. You would have to ask a cutting permit to prove that you have the right and you have almost the obligation to cut this tree. Let's try to innovate. Maybe this is a time for innovation. And as I believe that Ukrainian cities can be a model for European cities, I think we should try to implement some strategies.
But it means that all the trees have to be first, there has to be some audit, and they have all to be counted.
They have to be counted. This is very easily done by AI, from the satellite. So we have the technology to do so in a very quickly and cheap way. And then, of course, if you want to have this cutting permit, you need to do this medical assessment. But it's also very doable, and if you have to pay a little bit for it, then that's a first step, not to cut a tree for nothing.
And it will be cheaper than cutting a tree, because then you lose such a big value.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And a tree is a value, is an urban value. Under a tree, with the same weather, like with a heat wave of 42 degrees, the ground under a tree is 27, compared to 42 next door on your asphalt. So you see the difference of the climatic difference that a tree creates is enormous. So let's protect them.
And if you say about this small line, like narrow line of grass between the
rail tracks,
the rail tracks, will it really have any significant change? And what would be the effect?
In Bordeaux, the mayor has built new tramway lines about 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, until 10 years ago, and all the lines are with grass, and it just changes the whole quality of public space. It gives really fresh air to your eyes, to your skin, because it's fresher. It's much better. They're really solutions.
Thank you. I hope one day we will walk more on this street, because it's really one of the biggest. And I think that's why we are talking about the specific case, is because that's the approach that the city or different municipal institutions have in terms of rebuilding the cities, and it takes time, it takes lots of resources, and then we see that people are not quite happy sometimes with how it has been done. And I see your arguments, and I see why those people their compliance may be very reasonable. What else do you think the city could do in terms of adaptation to the climate change that you mentioned about, except trees, saving trees, and putting more grass?
There are a number of things that a city could do to face climate change. Is first to reduce its energy consumption. So that means to have a plan on the public buildings, on we talked about mobility, so to reduce the overall consumption of energy, transport, heating of houses, mostly, because that's the main two parts of energy consumption, to create this layer, this green layer all around the city to make to give access for every flat to a park within 300 meters. This is what the World Health Organization asks every city to do on Earth, is to be able from each apartment to see 3 trees from your window, to have your plot of 30% of natural soil, 30%, and to have a park at the most 300 meters away from your doorstep. So that's general rules. Of course, in the center of the city, it's impossible. But at least you have the promenade with the opera house. You have some parks around. So Lviv has got a very human and very nice scale. And it's important to work on the scale of the extensions of the city. And when we talk about climate change, we also talk about what every one of us in this city would need when there is a heat wave or when there is a storm or anything. So basically, I think the qualities of the city centers, we have to find the same qualities or the same level of qualities in every single micro-district or district of the city. That means access to nature, that means access to services, the 15-minute city, basically. You know, this theory that Carlos Moreno in Paris developed, it should be probably one of the high lines of the strategy for Lviv in the coming years, and not talking about the role of the city for the whole country as a logistic, as a new gate, which as well, if we work well on the scheme of traffic for trains, there can be also a model for transport within the whole continent. You know, most of the goods are transported in France and in Germany by trucks. And I'm from the southwest of France, and we see every day lines and lines and lines of trucks going from the north of Europe to the south of Europe. And it's so silly. We have nice rail tracks to put these trucks on the rail tracks and to ship them from the north to the south. We don't do it. There are probably lobbies. It's almost more flexible to have to think that I have a truck and not a train, etc. And there are probably problems with the national train systems. But still, I think if you manage to do this, that's a great example for the whole continent.
That's a very interesting point, because from what I know, that Ukrainian railway station company has been the main profitable part of it is not about passengers. It's about
goods.
It's about goods. Yeah. So probably it could be a good experiment. But does it mean that this, in terms of thinking of the future of Lviv, like, I don't know, Lviv in 2030 or Lviv in 2040, it means that we have not only to think about the city and its boundaries, but also about its connection to other regions and countries, like
its connections to other cities, big cities, and to the larger landscape of European landscape, but also its connection to the surrounding villages, to the surrounding, the Hinterland, as we say in German, which is the countryside around Lviv, which is very rich, very beautiful. If Lviv becomes so attractive, the threat is that the small villages will fall asleep or become less and less attractive, or some kind of a repulsive, and I say so because it's really the case in France. We have metropolized a lot, a few cities that became metropolis, and we forgot about the smaller towns, smaller villages. And now we see with the COVID, we see with that we need balance. We need balance between the big cities and the smaller villages and smaller cities. So it's also by connecting all of them that we can protect them.
Mm-hmm. And what about the water? In terms also of climate changes, I remember we had this conversation at Canary Wharf in London when we went met at the Ukraine Recovery Conference. Lviv had in its history not a big, but it was a nice river right in the center, where now you can see Opera House, and on the main avenue, Freedom Avenue, Prospect Svobody Street. And now it's underground. It was hidden and closed. And there were different thoughts, ideas there were a few ideas regarding water in the recent few years. One of the idea was to reopen the
duct.
The duct. And another idea was to make new ponds, bigger ponds in Lviv. What's your thinking about it?
What a lot of cities that put underground their river fancy to recover to retrieve them, to reopen the ducts and make it accessible. Only a few of them have done it, but it is possible, and it is it's a long way, but it is possible. Of course, having water on the surface is definitely a way to create different biotopes, to create a larger biodiversity within the city, to cool down as well some blocks, some surroundings. So it has a very good advantage. And what I see, for example, in Western Europe is that it is compulsory now to have a certain infiltration in every plot that a developer, for example, would build. He has to have open. We call it an open pond, which is a dry pond, which is a pond only when it rains. So it's kind of a topographic low that it is filled in when there's too much water, and then all of a sudden there's water, and then progressively the water goes down. We're facing water shortage everywhere in Ukraine, even more. So we have to make sure that the cycle of the water is well respected, and it's only respected when the water goes really down, not to the duct, but to the ground.
That would be a great idea for Lviv, which is raining so often.
Exactly. Yeah, and it can be really beautiful. It can be very poetic. You have ponds, you have places that fill in, and then the water disappears, and all of that is also an ingredient for design, an ingredient for atmosphere and experience.
Thank you so much for all of your ideas. And is there something else you think Lviv should be thinking of to become the best city of, the world?
And I think you have a great chance, is that you are at the forefront, not on the front line, but you're at the forefront of the new Ukraine. And so you have this role model that is also a responsibility to show to other Ukrainian cities the way. And you have also the chance of being the closest to Europe. So you will naturally get a lot more investments straight away. And you have to use that as a leverage to transform in a good way the city and to show the way for the whole country. So I would say congrats for this forum, because it shows a very positive and optimistic way. Now we just have to, make it happen, and
that's true.
And we're very enthusiastic.
That's good, and I do hope we'll do as much as possible, as much as we can. And thanks also for your ideas and your support. and all of your friends' support to Ukraine and rebuilding of our cities. And we'll have and we'll definitely build absolutely new, innovative Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. By the way, and I take this opportunity of being here with you to say that we are setting up a workshop on timber construction, wood construction in Bordeaux, southwest of France, preparing the Wood Rise Summit. We have a workshop for students in architecture, and we invite 10 students, architecture students from Ukraine, 10 students from Japan and 10 students from France to participate to this workshop, where we will work on wooden construction for habitat, for housing. And each team will propose a project. There will be a jury. The president of the jury will be Shigeru Ban, this Japanese architect who was actually talking today and who is very famous for his temporary housing. The chosen project will be exhibited in Rome at the Villa Medici, which is in the center of Rome. It belongs to France, and France organizes their festival every spring. And so this wooden project, will be built and exhibited in Rome for, I don't know, a few months, or 6 months, I believe. So it's a good opportunity.
Definitely.
So you should check the Instagram woodrise_workshop, and please send us your CV and an application.
And what are the conditions
Conditions?
to apply?
It's very easy. You have to be an architecture student, and you have to send us an email, and we just ask you to come to France by your own means, and then we will be in charge of the rest. Food, accommodation, etc. will be paid. Only you just need to get to France.
Great. I do believe that we have many good young Ukrainians who will definitely try to use this opportunity. And thank you for this. And I think that also might be a very productive for not only for Ukrainians but also for participants from France and Japan.
Exactly.
And I like the idea of wooden architecture. So
this is your identity again.
Yeah.
This is wooden architecture. The chata vernacular architecture is Ukrainian. You have an amazing history on this, and we have to reconnect to this and to make it contemporary with new technologies, etc. And so I'm very happy if it works out, and we have to gather these 10 students from here.
Great. Just one small question here is, should they write a motivation letter in the email? Yes.
Everything is on the Instagram page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So.
Great. And one more thing you just mentioned about temporary housing. I know you saw it in Lviv a year ago. We spoke about it a year ago, that probably it's not the best idea to make temporary housing for all IDPs just at one place. Not good in terms of integration and economical issues. Now you see the new developments but also at the same location. What do you think about it? Should we still build more temporary housing blocks as ghettos? I don't know. Or should we do something differently?
Of course, we should do it differently. I used to be the administrator of a foundation called Emergency Architects, and we used to work all around the globe. After every crisis, every war or natural catastrophe, we would intervene. And our motto was to say, never temporary. Never think it will be temporary, because it doesn't exist. It always stays and stays and stays. And you can look at Georgia after the war with Russia. They built also some kind of temporary villages, and they're still there 14 years later. So so that's the first argument. Second argument is my friends from Foundation Rayan Adin in Kyiv. They're rebuilding houses for a cheaper price than actually the cube that you buy in Poland and that you bring, with natural materials, so out of timber construction, and in much better quality for the inhabitants. So temporary housing is neither quality, nor price, nor sustainable, because what do you do afterwards? When the people are left, what do you do with these boxes? They're just going to be the garbage of tomorrow.
So you can't build the city of tomorrow with such a garbage.
Exactly, with such a waste. And if you can't recycle it, at least if it were recyclable, but it's not even. So there's a major problem, global problem on this, according to me. And we should find strategies to build these new neighborhoods in a quick way, but good way, with again local resources.
Great. Martin, thanks you for this conversation, and see you again next time.
Thanks a lot. See you.